Hello, so this is our final module, Phase 3, Build, Feel Like Yourself Again. Today we are bringing everything together to hopefully help you start to feel like yourself again. Now that we've reached the final module, we can actually start talking about body composition or body recomp. So, recovery came first. You've spent the earlier modules rebuilding your movement, nutrition, and strength. And that's exactly what we needed to happen before we started worrying about changing your body. If fat loss or body recomposition is something that you want, we could absolutely approach it strategically. But I want to be really clear when I say this that fat loss is optional, and you really don't need to lose weight to be successful, healthy, or to feel good in your body. But I do understand that that is a goal for a lot of mums, and so I'm going to teach you how to do it in a safe and sustainable way. If you do choose to pursue it, we're not going to be doing crash diets, cutting out entire food groups, or starting over every Monday. We're going to use what you've already built. So eat enough, train consistently, make small, sustainable changes that you can actually maintain. The goal isn't just to change your body, it's to learn how to do it without losing your life in the progress. Because I don't know about you, but personally, I don't want to miss out on 95% of life just to be 5 kilos lighter. So, what creates fat loss? Let's talk about the basics of fat loss because this is where I want to take a lot of the confusion out of it. To lose body fat, your body needs to be in an energy deficit, meaning that over time you're using more energy than you're consuming. That's just the very basic explanation of it. Basically, energy in needs to be lower than energy out. But that doesn't mean that you need to eat as little as possible. In fact, a moderate deficit is generally much easier to sustain and just going to be better for the way your body functions overall. You still want to eat enough food to train, recover, feel energized, and actually live your life. And there's no magic calorie target that works for every mum. So your starting point depends on things like your body size, your activity levels, your training goals, and whether or not you're breastfeeding. So you might have seen in your portal your calculator, your macro and calorie calculator. We use this as a bit of a starting point to work out your personalized calorie and macro goals rather than just copying some influencers or some random 1500 calorie meal plan. So, the goal isn't to have the biggest deficit that you can survive, it's the smallest deficit that gets you moving in the right direction, and then we can modify from there. All right, now we're going to work out your numbers. Inside your portal, under the tools section, you'll find your calorie calculator. This is going to give you your estimate of your BMR, which is the energy your body uses at rest, and then your TD, which basically is your overall, takes your overall energy into account. From there, you can use that information to work out an appropriate starting calorie target if fat loss is your goal or if muscle building is your goal. So, in the Excel spreadsheet, which you can either download or you can open in Google Sheets, it's got all these little drop downs where you and little things, and it'll calculate your calories and your macros automatically for you using a couple of standard formulas, and you can decide select whether or not you're breastfeeding and what your goal is there. I do want to emphasize that this is your starting point and these numbers are an estimate just based on a couple of formulas that have been created on the general public. So they're not a magical number that your body has to hit perfectly every single day. And we do want to adjust these based on the results that we're seeing. So start with a calculator, follow your target consistently for a period of time, and then look at what's actually happening with your weight and your measurements, your energy levels, your hunger, and your training. This is basically what we do in my one-to-one coaching, but this is something that we would assess week to week and make changes. So if you do feel like you need a bit more support with this, feel free to check out my vision board method. Otherwise, if you feel that you can do it on your own, use this calculator as your starting point. And then, like I said, adjust it based on what's happening. So, how big is the deficit? The answer basically, like I've said, is not to go as big as you can possibly tolerate. Ideally, we want a smaller, more moderate deficit, and that's usually much easier to sustain. So you can still eat enough to feel satisfied and fuel your training, function like a normal human being, and fuel your milk supply while gradually working towards your goal. Because a huge deficit might look great on paper, in real life, this can turn into feeling constantly hungry, exhausted, thinking about food, losing your milk supply, overeating, feeling guilty, continuing that binge restrict cycle. We don't want that, all right? That's what we absolutely want to avoid. And we don't want to ruin your period by being stuck in this cycle, all right? So we want to think about small deficit, which leads to sustainable changes, which leads to consistency, which then will lead to results. So we've chatted about protein in our nutrition module, but what about your carbs and your fats? Because they're obviously the other part of the picture when it comes to that healthy plate model and when it comes to just your general diet. So I really don't want you falling into the trap of thinking that you need to cut out either of these to lose body fat. They're often demonized, and it's really unnecessary to demonize both of these macros because they are both super important for our overall health and energy. And if you're breastfeeding, then milk supply as well. So, they're an important source of energy, particularly when you're strength training, and they can help support your training performance and your recovery. Dietary fats are super important as they play a really good role in providing your essential fatty acids, your fat soluble vitamins, and helping to produce your hormones, which, again, if you're breastfeeding, is a really key part of the puzzle there. So, we don't need to cut out carbs or go super low fat just because you're trying to lose weight. Your calculator will give you some individual targets based on your calorie and your macro goals. But again, think of these as a framework, not a rigid set guideline. We don't need to hit every number perfectly every single day. Again, like I've said, consistency over perfection, and we're looking for that consistency over time, not nutritional perfection. Oh no, the scale is stuck. What do we do? If you calculated your deficit and you've been doing your best and the scale still isn't moving, first of all, don't panic. Let's check the data. So, before we immediately slash your calories, I want you to ask yourself, first of all, have you actually been consistent? 2, has it been long enough to see a meaningful trend? 3, are my portions and my serving sizes being estimated reasonably accurately? 4, has my activity changed? I also want you to look at what's happening outside of the scale. So, with your strength, your measurements, how your clothes are fitting. And number 6, which I haven't put in here, but your hormonal environment is also going to have quite a big impact on what that scale weight is doing day to day. So, whether you're in your luteal phase or your ovulatory phase, or whether or not you're breastfeeding certain times of the day, what you've eaten the day before, all of these things are going to have those smaller changes on a day-to-day level. And so that's why we want to adjust based on trends, not one simple weigh-in. So your body weight can fluctuate for so many reasons. And please don't calculate your deficit on a Monday, decide it's not working because the scale hasn't changed by Friday. All right. So, like I said, we're adjusting based on trends, not one weigh in. Before we wrap up, I want you to remember this. This isn't just another diet, and we're not here to spend the next 6 months being perfect, restricting everything we enjoy, and then constantly starting over. We're here to eat enough, train hard, build muscle, and create a manageable deficit when fat loss is appropriate for you. So that might not be you at this stage right now, but when it's appropriate, if it's appropriate, we want it to be sustainable and quite slow. When your goals change, you can then adjust. So you learn how to maintain your results rather than immediately jumping into the next diet or the next challenge. Ultimately, the goal is to live your life while still taking care of your body and your baby. So that's the whole point. This isn't a temporary plan, it's learning how to look after yourself for the long term. And like I always say, I'm so proud of you for taking this step. As I mentioned earlier, if you need any extra support, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram or check out my one-to-one coaching. Have a little look at your portal, for the rest of your workouts, your recipe books, your meal guides, all of that. It's all accessible to you to use forever and go at your own pace. Feel free to rewatch modules, go back different phases. But yeah, it's been lovely spending this time with you, and I hope that the rest of your journey is beautiful. All right, see you later.